Okay, probably my favorite thing to do in STATA is graphs. I think it's the most fun. So let's just play around with a couple simple ones. Graph two-way is sort of a standard shell to when you're doing a lot of the different graphing functions. You can see sort of all the different types of graphs you can do by, again, going to the help here, right? You got scatter, line, dot, area graphs, lots of fancy stuff that I never use, and then some of the stuff that I use sometimes. But so lots of different options. I'm not going to go through everything. I'm just going to touch on a couple basic ideas here. So a scatter plot is just giving us a basic scatter. It's still got my nice scheme that I put in from before. So it's not always going to look like that. It's only going to look like that if you sort of tell it like, oh, give me this like cool style that I like. And there's a bunch of different schemes you can choose from. I picked sort of a basic one. But I do like it better than the default one. So that's a scheme. You can also, here's just an example of a histogram, right? These are super easy to make, and I find them a lot less fussy to do than Excel, particularly if you want to make a ton of them, right? It's a lot easier once you figure out how to make a graph in STATA. It's a lot. You can make 20 of them, and it would take you an extra like 1 minute, maybe, if that, 30 seconds if you're paying attention. If you're doing it in Excel, you got to do all sorts of other stuff. It's a real pain to make a bunch of versions of something. So that's the advantage, I think, of really any programming language over trying to do stuff in Excel. You can also graph things on the same axes here. So you can plot things together. So here's an example where we're doing graph two-way, and then we're doing one scatter plot for the foreign cars, and we're giving it this color, right? Notice here's our option for that scatter, and it's to color it red. And then these two bars tell STATA put another graph on that same graph, and that next graph is also going to be a scatter. It doesn't have to be the same type of graph. It can be any kind of graph. And saying, let's do the domestic ones and let's color them blue. And then we have a legend at the bottom. And I'm just sort of making it nicer than it would be otherwise. But lots of different options here. Right, so here we have the result. If we want to get fancier, we could add on another piece. So this is the same thing. We're just adding on some L fits, which is going to be a linear fit of the data for each of these subgroups, right? And so we can see what that's going to look like. Boom, right? We're just fitting lines to each of those sets of data. So this sort of thing can be useful if you're trying to get a feel for the data. You can sort of understand what's going on a little bit better than if you're just running the regression, because you can say for example, like, oh, like there's just like this one really big outlier that's pulling this whole regression line off of where it would otherwise be. So that sort of thing can be useful. And important to just mention when it comes to these options, like you can do anything. You can do anything. I think you can do anything that you can do in Excel in STATA. You just gotta sort of figure out the options for it, right? So the way to do that, right? You can go here. There's some specific options that are specific to a given type of graph, but there's also just a bunch of sort of standard options, right? So if you want it to look a certain way, let's say, what do I want my titles to look like? Well, you can have a Y title and an X title. You can have different types of labels for your axes. You can have different scales. Anyway, it's sort of endless. The possibilities are endless. One other thing that's a nice one to keep in mind is this by function. So especially if you're doing something like a histogram, it's often nice to do it by some category of variables. So this is going to make the same thing, the same graph, but do it twice. So it's a little bit different than graphing things on top of each other. Sometimes you might want to just see them sort of side by side, and that's another way to do that.